Good evening, gentlemen. We are live on a brief history of mystery for Mystery Machine. How are we, guys?
Hi, buddy. Hi, guys.
Doing well, thank you. Yeah, doing well.
Not bad at all.
Excellent. So this evening we are talking Princess Diana, and this is a bitch to research, but it's been an interesting week. So I'm just going to do what we normally do. I'm just going to throw stuff out there. We're going to talk about it, and then we'll see where we go. So, the tragic loss of Princess Diana is where we're starting. So, the 30th of August, 1997, she flew in. They left Sardinia in a private jet. It's just private jets and flying around, and it's just spent 9 days. And they weren't at Tenerife anyway, or Ibiza. They were somewhere nice on his daddy's boat. And then they flew back to Paris on the way home and went to the Ritz Paris, which I didn't know there was a Ritz in Paris, but there is. And it's owned by Al Fayed. It's still owned by him today. 12:20, they got in the car to head over to Dodi's flat, basically. At the all these notes, Rue Arsène José. Later on, we've got loads of posh people's names. I'm really looking forward to it because I can't pronounce any of them. so that should be good. And they're all really insane names as well. And we've got one chick called Tiggy, and the rest of her name is even worse. But anyway. So, obviously, guys, that they travelled. They were headed towards the apartment. They were chased by paparazzi. Even though Dodi had arranged for like a decoy car to leave through the front entrance. They left through the rear entrance. Some paparazzi still ended up chasing because they weren't fooled by the front exit car, the clever sods. And obviously, as they entered the tunnel, there was the tragic accident. What are your guys' thoughts? I'm just gonna go through, throw bits out there. We'll talk about it because there's a lot. If I just go through everything that happened, I'll be talking for about 35 minutes. So we'll just go through bit by bit, and then I'll ask you guys what you think, if anything.
Okay.
Cool.
So how about we've seen the video just at the start there. Anything that jumps out at you straight away? Just anything.
No.
Okay. There was one. Well, you know my favourite conspiracy when looking at this, that it's not Princess Diana in the video.
I've heard this one, yeah.
And I got to admit, it doesn't really look like it. But we're going to skip over that one because I don't think there's any real evidence to think that she's still alive or anything like that. Right. So.
No, but that does that particular one does do the round, that they're actually both alive and well and living on an island. It's probably exactly the same island that Bruce Lee's living on, and Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly, and but they're alive and well and living on an island, don't you know?
I suppose they'd have the resources.
Oh yeah.
They didn't tell Dad even if they did though, because he went nuts for like 10 years trying to prove that it was a conspiracy.
And if anything, the single biggest proponent of propagating the conspiracy theories that surround a big bunch of individual actual conspiracy theories that surround Princess Diana's death, actually, Dodi Al Fayed, yeah. Mohammed, beg your pardon.
Exactly, yeah. So they drove along the Rue Combin. This is where I'm going to go. My French is going to really show off my skills. They drove along the Place de la Concorde. Then the Cours de Lorraine, which is the one side of the Seine River. And then at 12:23, they entered the Pont de la Alma tunnel. They were traveling at 65 miles an hour. The speed limit was 31 miles an hour, which sounds a bit random, but it should have been in kilometers an hour. But I couldn't be asked to write down the kilometers an hour because I'm British. We don't do kilometers an hour.
So deal with it.
Yeah, confusing.
Screw you. And the Americans wouldn't understand anyway. So, paparazzi was swarming the vehicle by all witnesses and little mopeds and motorbikes trying to take pictures and flashes and things. At some point, we're going to talk about the white Uno a little bit later, but at some point it looks like the vehicle may have struck a white Uno. It then struck the 13th pillar at 65 miles an hour, spun, hit the wall. There is no barrier in that point of the tunnel, and there still isn't today. They couldn't be bothered. Couldn't be bothered to put one in. So that is when the accident happened. Police arrived at 12:30. Ambulance arrived at 12:35. The police immediately arrested 5 photographers. 2 more were arrested later. 1 was beaten by witnesses, and 20 rolls of films were confiscated. The main reason why one of the photographers were beaten by witnesses was because they weren't trying to help get Diana out or help rescue anybody. They basically were taking photos. Some of those images did make it to the internet, which I'm not particularly, squeamish or whatever, and I think that's sick.
Yeah, I didn't see him.
No, I
just
don't
out of a respect thing. Yeah, I mean, I have seen them, or the ones that have made it anyway, and there isn't anything too graphic. But it's just
no. You see her sort of slumped over.
It's what it is, isn't it? It's what it is. It's what it signifies. What it's about.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's disgraceful, really.
Frederick Millet was an off-duty doctor. He was pretty much the first on the scene, and he testified that at one point, he believes she said she was 6 weeks pregnant. Again, that's going to come a little bit later. She repeated, "Oh my God," over and over again, but she was alive. At least at that point. Henry Paul was the driver. He was dead at the scene. 3.5 times over the legal limit, 1.7 grams of litre of alcohol per litre of blood, 2.5 times over the legal limit what we would have in the UK at the time. Diana was then removed from the car at 1 a.m. She went into immediate cardiac arrest. There was repeated CPR and blood transfusions, including actually when they actually open the chest and do it manually.
Yeah.
She died roughly at 4 a.m. Dodi Fayed died at the scene, and Trevor Rees-Jones had serious head injuries, and he cannot remember anything from the accident or that evening. So there was then an 18-month French judicial review with a 6,000-page, never published report. They concluded that it was actually Henry Paul's fault, that he was drunk driving and he lost control of the vehicle and crashed. A UK inquest then happened under Justice Scott Baker with a jury, even though that was argued for about 3 months on whether they'd have a jury or not. They were asked loads of questions about whether it was involved, whether there was possible royal family involvement. There was about 30 different points they had to answer. But basically, they found that there was no evidence that the death was ordered. They concluded that there was gross negligence of paparazzi and Henry Paul. It was at that point Harry and William both released their statements saying that they thought that this was put an underline under it, done, over. And Al-Fayed dropped his 10-year campaign to prove that there was a conspiracy. So that's the basic events of the evening and the death of Princess Diana. Now, obviously, there's lots to unpick there. Do you guys want to jump in at any point on that one before we move on to the CCTV cameras, because they're all interested?
You pretty much give a rundown of what was going on there. I mean, I've made it, which isn't going to come as a surprise really to too many people, a massive amount of notes, really.
I mean,
You know, I don't know if we're doing it sort of like piece by piece or whether we're just sort of like flitting over the top of it. But I'll quickly
we're
have
going
a
to
look
break
to
it
see
down
that
into bits. Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I'll hold back then. I'll hold fire.
okay. Right. So if we talk about the CCTV, and
Mhm.
I'm going to break that down into a few little bits because one of the first arguments is that Henry Paul was drunk. So we see drunk and on prescription medication that
Okay.
contributed towards the accident. So we've all seen the video just before where they're waiting in the corridor to leave the rear exit. Many people have argued that Henry Paul does not look remotely drunk or in any way inebriated. What do you think about that? Because I mean, I watched the video and to be honest, he looks fine.
He does. He does look. He possibly looks a little bit flushed from what you can see in the videos, but no, to me, he looks absolutely fine. There's reports that he had just 2 drinks with a couple of other bodyguards or something, I think, at the time. But in the video, no, he looks completely sober, to be honest. So, like the way he's standing, the way he's holding himself as well.
It's not the greatest quality video in the world, but
it's not. No, it's not. Unfortunately,
1997. Then.
Yeah. When I watch the video, I don't really. His mannerisms and body language don't suggest he's drunk. You know, if you know I know that there's inhibitions and retardation of reaction in your senses when you're obviously under the influence of alcohol or drugs and so on and so forth. But you know, for him to have lost control the way that he did, or the way that he's portrayed to have been driving almost maniacally, you would sort of expect, in a way, and he used the term, you know, generically, I know it's quite a sweeping comment to make, a statement to make. You would sort of expect him to sort of portray that kind of level of, you know, being debilitated by drink or drugs within the footage. Now, I don't see any of that. I have to be honest. I don't see any of that in the footage. Now, there is a famous picture that was taken by one of the paparazzi, where it was taken right into the front of the car, and you can see Diana looking out of the rear of the car because you can see a blonde hair turned away. You can see Trevor Rees-Jones sort of holding his hand up like that, as if to obscure his face from the flash.
He drops the visor down, doesn't he, just as he takes the photo?
You know, you've got Henry Paul, who's almost like grinning maniacally kind of thing. Well, what I did do in the past, due to, you know, a bit of geekism, was to test the size of the iris. See how
did.
I really did. This is not a joke. Yeah, I absolutely did. I zoomed in using several bits of software in the past to measure the size. You know, to you know, see the difference between both being hit by the same flash. So you should see the same level. You should see the same level of contraction, and you don't. You know, Henry Paul's does look wider, does look bigger, not reacting the same to the flash. I know that everybody's individual and everybody's different. So that sort of, for a little while, sort of like got me. His reaction to the photo going off and the face that he's pulling looks a little bit strange. But aside from that, I don't think the CCTV footage, the bits that we've been subjected to, I'm sure we'll go to the bits that have been taken out, what people haven't seen or the lack thereof. But beyond that, from what I've seen, it doesn't really suggest he was absolutely off his nut kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
He is pulling like a stupid face. I would apologise to everybody watching that. We were supposed to have images, but my laptop was playing silly buggers, and my stress levels are going in it, so we gave up on it.
Wasn't there also quite a lot of carbon monoxide in his blood as well? When they checked his blood and did the autopsy.
Yeah, there was supposed to be. This is where a lot of things like come into conjecture about it, because he was known for exactly what he drunk and the amount that he drunk by the people that worked with him. And there was absolutely nothing to suggest that he had anything other than what he would normally have, and especially knowing what his duties were that night, and that he was, you know, to all intents and purposes, massively responsible when it came to that kind of thing. He knew who his charge was. He knew what he was doing, and it would be completely out of character for that to be the case. And in fact, one time reported that there wasn't enough alcohol in his blood to be able to do it, and then 6 months later, at the end of the inquest and everything, all of a sudden there was a 180-degree turn by the chief of police in the UK, who was leading the investigation, to actually turn around and say it's due to, as Jay said before, the Henri Paul being drunk, and of course the actions of the paparazzi. And he had turned around and said to the parents of Henri Paul that your son should be, your son isn't to blame for what happened. He said this to them in private when they come to visit him in Paris. And then, like I said, a 180-degree turn. But he used to like a drink of Ricard, as far as I'm aware. This is where the notes and stuff like that come in. And he said that 3 times over, or 2.5 times, thereabouts, the French drink drive limit at the time, it was estimated that he drunk the equivalent of 5 measures of Ricard, which is his favourite licorice-flavoured aperitif, before getting behind the wheel, which isn't in suit or in keeping with what people who know him would say about the way that he would act, given his responsibility that night.
Yeah, because he is responsible. He was on duty, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised his employer would allow him, but anyway. But also, I mean, he went into the tunnel at 65 miles an hour, and that's where he struck the pillar at 65 miles an hour. And fair enough, that's fast enough if you hit an immobile object that's going to destroy the vehicle, and I kind of understand that. And we're going to get into the seatbelts in a bit, but it's not that fast that I think that you would lose control. It's 65 miles an hour that isn't significantly quick, particularly if you're any sort of used to driving in any way. I don't see that's fast enough, even if you were inebriated. I think you'd have to be pissed for that to be fast enough. If you went in at 80 miles an hour or 90 miles an hour,
the car
and
was
then
in a
suddenly had
state,
to
wasn't
slam
it?
the brakes on or something, I could see it. But okay. Another thing that I took from the video was that there was a lot of rumours that Diana and Dodie, again, we'll talk about them being engaged a bit later, but there's a lot of rumours to say they weren't serious, and that Diana was actually already getting a bit bored by the Dodie relationship. A lot of the friends said she wasn't that serious. She'd already texted them or messaged them saying, "Oh yeah, this is getting a bit boring now." You can see in the video though that they're very affectionate towards each other, as far as I can see. Diana stood one side of the corridor at one point, and she comes to him. They're holding hands. They're cuddling. What do you take from the video and about how they're behaving together? I mean, and what we think that.
They seem really happy, didn't they? To be honest, not really happy, but like they're enjoying each other's company and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't seem any sort of separation or like anxiety of wanting to be near each other and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So that's always just seems to me that. Go on, Dave. Sorry.
No, you're okay, buddy. It's for me, Diana even made a statement about marriage not long beforehand, because she did get asked about this, saying that she needed another marriage as much as she needed a rash on her face.
Yeah.
She was quite vocal about it because of her bad experience with her marriage with Prince Charles.
God, it was
and
awful.
Just because she's shown affection to Dodi Al Fayed by holding his hand and standing near him in the CCTV footage that we see, is no indicator whatsoever that there was ever any intention to get engaged or get married or take it any further than just being nice to one another. Now, people act differently under different situations. Obviously, we know that, and whilst person A might be fed up of their relationship and makes it completely obvious to the person they're in the relationship with, person B might be fed up with their relationship but doesn't make it as obvious and still goes through the motions of showing affection, even though mentally or psychologically they're feeling repression or feeling like they need to get out of there, and so on and so forth. So again, actions don't necessarily dictate or actual indications of long-term thaws. I don't think that's concerned.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear to be somebody that's bored in a relationship to me or about to thing. But I mean, we'll talk about the engagement and the ring and things. But they do seem affectionate towards each other. But to go wider on the CCTV, so that's the CCTV footage of them leaving the back entrance. Go wider on the CCTV along their route. They're only driving 5 minutes or so before the accident, but they would have passed at least 17 CCTV cameras.
Yeah.
Out of all of those CCTV cameras, how many actually got any video?
None.
Not one. Also, the accident happened in a blind spot of the tunnel. So even though there are multiple CCTV cameras within the tunnel, none of them caught any images.
Yeah.
How much of a smoking gun do you think that is? That no CCTV footage existed after they left the Ritz.
Well, I read somewhere that there was a car going along the same sort of direction, the same road, about 15 minutes later, and it caught a speeding ticket. I don't know if you guys heard of that.
Yeah,
I saw it.
So, it's a bit iffy, isn't it? It is. The whole thing stinks, really, to be honest. But just going back to the car quickly, if that's all right. I read and watched again. I can't remember the name of the fellow that investigated it, but he reckons that the car was going around about 101 to 106 miles an hour because there were skid marks at the top just before you enter the slope to go into the tunnel, and he reckons that's where the car hit the white Uno. But then obviously the fella put brakes on, the car skidded, and then went up on the right hand side embankment of the tunnel, like the sort of wall bit, the flat wall bit before it goes under, and left the road for about 20 or 30 foot, and then sort of landed on the entrance into the tunnel, and sort of lost.
At that point, it would have slowed because the 65 miles an hour is just the impact speed, I think.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that would make sense. That this was a much longer crash.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that it lost control within the tunnel and spun.
But the
What do you
cameras.
think, Dave? How much?
The cameras.
How much? Remembering it was 1997 as well. How important do you think it is that we haven't got CCTV footage of this?
Well, there was a guy, and his name is Sean McMathuna, and he went to Paris to photograph the site of the car crash at the Point d'Alma, or the Alma, and in a prominent position that's overlooking the crash site was a traffic camera, which on the day that he was there was facing the entrance to the tunnel, he says, where Dinah's car crashed. They're saying, it is possible that at the moment of the crash, it was facing a different direction. But however, according to several sources, it wasn't. It was facing in that direction. There's loads of excuses about why that didn't catch any footage. That the rumours that electricity supplies in the road tunnels were cut off 25 minutes before the Mercedes that Diana was entered into it. I don't know what I think about that one personally. They say that the Al-Fayed's lawyers did request copies from the tapes of the 17 cameras that covered the journey, as you said before, and they were told by the French police that none of them tapes existed for any of those cameras. So for all of those 17 cameras that were along that journey up until the moment of the crash, all 17 of them, the French police categorically denied that there was any such tape footage that existed for those cameras. And in fact, the French authorities at the time claimed that the cameras were not recording any images, and it was noted by NBC, apparently also at the time, that Paris has the most sophisticated video surveillance system of any city in the world. Again, at that time, with all the cameras should have been recording to videotape and saved for 2 days, except on this one occasion. Now, a guy called Pascal Poulin was the commander of the Paris Information and Control Centre, which was responsible for the Alma Tunnel camera. And when he was interviewed by British investigators, he said In view of the scale of the accident, we tried to see the scene of the accident using the camera situated at Place de Alma, which is the camera we're referring to. But it's saying that was impossible because, in fact, the screen showed only a blurred yellow light. We tried to manipulate the camera, that is, to use the zoom and maneuver it, in vain. We did not have the control. It says, by that I mean that another section must have been using the camera and manipulating it, so another control group was trying to use the camera and operate it at the same time that they were, and must not have released it. It had remained under remote control on another section's control panel, but it could have also been due to it being out of order. So he can't make his mind up why it didn't record anything. And Mr. Palan said that in any order to record images taken by the camera would have to have been taken at the highest level of authority and not by a police officer.
Exactly. There's been loads of excuses why video footage wasn't available. Some of it was that a lot of the CCTV cameras we're talking about were privately owned, so actually like physically security cameras, and they're obviously pointing at the shops rather than the road. But a lot of security cameras, they don't do that. They'll sit on the side of the building, they sort of look down at the front of the building, but they're a wide enough angle that you can normally see who's coming approach. I can imagine that some of them wouldn't see the road, but all of them.
Yeah,
but also there's a story around the time which I've struggled to get to read up on this time because I can't seem to find it. But I do remember at the time that there was a story going around that all of the government cameras for a 5-mile radius, for some reason, were deactivated that evening. And there was supposed to be some sort of security testing or something done. And part of that was that they shut all the cameras down, but I can't substantiate that because I just cannot find the story. But interesting stories like that seem to disappear from the internet sometimes. Also, the way that the crash seemed to happen in a blind spot of the tunnel, I don't believe anything that any of that tunnel was not covered by cameras, for a really good reason. That fires and accidents and things like that in tunnels is really bad.
Yes.
So they make sure they can see them. So it doesn't make sense to me. So, okay, we'll talk about the paparazzi, and we've already mentioned the white Uno, but let's talk about the white Uno.
Can I just quickly cover one last thing about the CCTV?
Yeah, go for it.
And that's that the spokesman for the Paris Urban Traffic Unit said that they stopped using the camera at 11 p.m., which was around an hour and 20 minutes. So again, a conflicting story as to why there were no footage. Yeah. They're saying that the camera got switched off at 11 p.m., which is an hour and 20 minutes before. And in the late 90s, a police officer called Eric Gugu led a team that were given the task of collecting all CCTV images on the route from the Ritz to the Alma underpass. And as you said, many belong to private businesses, including hotels, restaurants, that kind of thing, as well as a government department. Also, which said that all 17 of the cameras were facing away from the road, making all the film useless, which is another reason why none of it was released, because the one at the entrance to the tunnel was turned off and all the rest were facing completely the wrong direction. Now, conveniently, in an official report, Lieutenant Gugu wrote that the surveillance cameras on the private and public buildings along the route are only trained on the fronts of the building that they are there to protect. And for this reason, and the fact that many of the private companies objected to anybody seeing the film, the CCTV images were not made available. And then finally, our Lieutenant Marc Monod of the Paris Criminal Brigade, very grandiose sounding title that, said he visited the Ministry of Justice building next door to the Ritz and requested to see their CCTV footage. And according to all the official papers that surrounded that request, he reported that there were no images that contributed to the inquiry because all the cameras were positioned on ledges and did not provide any discernible detail. So conflicting stories into what's actually going on with the cameras. That, to me, is always a huge red flag.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Exactly. As soon as you start getting different stories, you've got to start asking questions.
Yeah.
I've copied all my notes out a second time, and I haven't written one of the names down for the white Uno.
Can I just make a quick thing about the white Uno with what David ISO put up a minute ago on the comments? Are
you going to mention the white light?
Excuse me. again, there's many people and eyewitnesses that say
Jumping the gun a bit, maybe. Yeah.
that it was a motorbike that was in front of the car and did the flash.
When we get to the MI5, MI6 thing, I promise you we're going to talk about the flashing white lights. Promise you, because that's part of the theory about maybe what caused the accident, isn't it? But so there's lots of witnesses that said they saw this white Uno, right?
That's in the film footage as well, isn't it? Outside the
I definitely wrote their names down.
Who are we talking about, buddy?
The two witnesses that said they saw the white Uno and they identified the Lee Van Than.
Lee Van Than, yeah.
Yeah.
Anderton fella.
Anderton is the other fella. So Dodie thought it was Anderton.
Okay, you're on about the
Who is a
Firestones,
photographer.
Jack and Robin Firestone.
Yeah, that sounds right. Francois or something. So there's the one guy that said they thought that it was a photographer, but when they were then put in front of or shown images of him, they couldn't pick him out of a lineup apparently. But Al Fayed thought it was this Anderton guy, who'd been following her around for over a week.
Yeah.
He thought he was, and Al Fayed was convinced it was to do with him. This other one is this Lan Van Than. It's just an awesome name. Even though there's forensic evidence that he had a white Uno, he was an old security guard, or field security guard. There was paint residue apparently that matched a Mercedes of the same class, but the police never followed it through. Before we talk about how good a murder weapon a Fiat Uno would be, but I'm pretty sure I could roll over on my own if I wanted to. How important is it, or how suspicious it is, again, that the police had forensic evidence and they just never bothered following it through? I mean, they literally never even impounded the car.
Evidence, isn't it? You know, they need it.
Well, I mean, we've never actually properly identified the white Uno. It's never been officially identified. We're speculating on these two other names. No official account has ever been made of what that vehicle was or whether it was even potentially there.
Wasn't it resprayed and sold on shortly after as well?
I believe so, yeah. But
it needs to be looked
tell me
up.
what you think of that. I just can't get
ridiculous,
my head
isn't
around that the police had forensic evidence and never followed it through. I can't get my head around that.
Yeah,
It makes no
exactly.
sense.
Yep.
Go on, Dave. You know you got loads of notes on that one.
I have.
Hit it.
Go for it.
Absolutely, when it comes to the white Uno, yeah. Okay, so interestingly, well, all of it's interesting, isn't it? Which is why we're here.
Mhm.
Now, there were at least 7 named witnesses that gave evidence about this small white car, which was really described as being perilously close to the Mercedes just before it crashed. Other reports describe it as leaving the scene shortly after the crash. And 2 of the most credible witnesses, there's apparently Georges and Sabine Dozon. You'll have to excuse the pronunciation. I'm not French. But Georgia or Sabine Dozon, who were returning home from dinner in their Rolls Royce. Very nice. And they had joined the Seine Embankment Expressway when they saw a white Fiat Uno being driven erratically out of the tunnel. Now, Georges recalled the Fiat zigzagging in the tunnel, coming so close to his Rolls that it almost touched the wing. And Sabine recalled a European-looking, fair-skinned, but a bit Mediterranean man. And both recalled that the man had a large dog in the back of his Fiat, worthy of bearing in mind the large dog thing. And apparently evidence at the scene did indeed show evidence of another car, and which did point to the exact make and model which we discussed in the Fiat Uno.
Yeah. That was paint residue, wasn't it? And then a lot of cars do have their specific sort of paints, aren't they? So they're able to identify roughly a make and model in years sometimes.
And this no, absolutely, that's absolutely bang on. Yeah, that's totally valid. Because it was found on the door, side panel, and mirror, which suggested, because there's two like types of theories here, but that the actual Fiat had sideswiped the Mercedes rather than the other way around, Excuse me, which led a lot of people to come up with a theory to believe that the car was intentionally driven off the road. But there was somebody who was supposed to be close to Diana who owned a car, which was a French paparazzi guy called Jean-Paul or James Anderson, who had recently taken photos of her and Dodie in the south of France. And theories have gone about that they've said this Anderson fellow was Henri Paul acting on behalf of the government. Okay, so according to reports, because we'll do the thing and then get on with our lives, is that Anderson's Fiat was kept in his garage at home in Lignières, 170 miles south of Paris, in a state of disrepair. Apparently, it was knackered, and the kind of damage that could have come from a collision, we can only speculate on that. And apparently, he exchanged it a month after the crash. Months later, also, Anderson was reported to have bragged about having been in the tunnel and gotten explosive photos, even telling friends that he'd been too cunning and sly to have been caught by the police for doing it. A lot of people think he was lying for obvious reasons. According to French authorities, the photographer left his house in the early hours of that morning in August 31st to fly to Corsica to interview a musician. And he could prove it with receipts. And he had a witness, and as an alibi, it didn't get much better than not being in the country, really, did it? You can't. What better alibi than I wasn't even in the same country at the time? But and also, no other witnesses could put him there at the right time in that particular area. Police apparently also examined his car. He'd gotten rid of and couldn't identify it as being involved. Now, analysis of the wreckage showed it had a glancing contact with the white Fiat Uno, as we've just said, okay, which left traces of paint on the bodywork. Now, it was Mohammed Al-Fayed who mostly claimed that this white Fiat Uno was used by MI6. It got too much into that because of where we're going to go with it as a means of making the car swerve and Henri Paul a crash. Because he was, we all know, we'll cover that side of it, no doubt about it. And he was quite public about the fact that he sold it Anderson, which is fine. And Al-Fayed coming out with the theory that this Anderson fellow was actually a Secret Service agent. That's been pretty much dismissed and proved to be untrue. But he was found dead. Anderson was found dead in a burnt-out car in 2000. Now, French authorities described it as being a suicide. And he found in the middle of a thick woodland. He had carbon monoxide in his lungs, which suggested that he was still breathing when the fire started and that he burned alive. However, somebody from the fire department who turned up to the accident said that when he saw his body, it looked like he had 2 bullet holes in his head, suggesting that he'd been shot. Double tap, yes. Thanks, Jamie. And quickly about this Lee Van Tham fella, because I know we move on to other bits, but between October 97 and October 98, French crash investigators identified and checked 4,668 white Fiat Unos of the right age, which have been registered in the 2 departments, whose numbers have been recalled by the Dorias, them lovely people driving around in the Rolls Royce. Now, only one would become a focus of interest to the French and the British authorities, and this belonged to a bodybuilder called Lee Van Tham. He was called in for questioning, apparently, Lee Van Tham. And during the course of the investigation, he denied having been there, obviously, and he said that he'd been on duty as a security guard dog handler. He had a dog.
Large dog in the back of the vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. A car compound in the north of Paris. Now, after the accident, he sprayed his car red. Car red on the Saturday. Now, and the theory is that the reason he changed his car to red is because in Vietnamese, red's considered to be a lucky color. It is in China as well, isn't it?
Yes,
so
it is.
But it was I don't know about that one. But
It seems to me that when you have coincidence on coincidence, and it would have been all over the news. I think it was within a day or two that they were looking for a white Uno.
Yes.
It seems to be likely then. And this was the vehicle that apparently, like I said, the police had forensic evidence. They had paint from the Uno that matched the Mercedes, and we have paint from the Mercedes that matches our Uno. So that means it's pretty likely. But the French authorities never followed up, and then he painted the bloody thing. So I mean, I can't get my head around why they would have eyewitnesses, some forensic evidence at least, and then don't follow it up.
Yeah.
That screams conspiracy.
Yeah, suspect.
Just
Okay. Anything else on the car before we move on?
I'm done waffling about that.
You never waffle, sir. Princess Diana was engaged. I actually think, guys, we should correct that to about to become engaged from the evidence that we've got. And she was pregnant. And then, oh no, we do need to talk a little bit more about the Uno. We'll go back. Forget I said that. Ignore it. Right. A white Uno as a murder weapon. We've already had some comments in the side chat. If this was a planned murder, there's no other way of really putting it, and the white Uno was involved, and the white Uno, even if it was driven by somebody that was an expert, would it make any sense that would be a vehicle you would use to take out an S-Class Mercedes?
Probably
or would you
not.
use something else?
You'd probably use something else, wouldn't you? Something a bit faster, a bit chunkier. But then again, I know squat about advanced driving and things like that. But you probably know a little bit about that. Have you done advanced
A
driving?
little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I will say it's possible.
Also,
Because you don't really need to push the vehicle out of the way. All you have to do is get in the right position and distract the driver enough. If you put your car into another vehicle, they'll do the work for you. But to actually have enough to be exact enough to make sure that the vehicle did what you wanted it to do, you wouldn't use a Fiat Uno. I mean, it's not just the weight of the vehicle; it's the power. You've got none.
Yeah.
So unless it was some sort of modified Uno, which you could do. I mean, you could put weights in it and they do all sorts of things. Put a couple of slabs in the boot, you're going to have a bit chunk and you can swing the tail around and do some damage. But it doesn't seem as a sensible murder weapon to me. It seems more likely that a slow-moving Fiat Uno surprised driver and he swerved to try to miss it. Potentially,
I think if you're following the line of it being conspiratorial and arranged by either the UK government on behalf of the Crown in coercion with the French government, you're at a level where you don't need to do that. There are much more effective means with which to take the car off the road, by sabotaging the actual vehicle itself with various contraptions or just sabotaging the actual engine. And we've all seen the film Speed. Oh yeah. And on top of which, you wouldn't need it to fit the official narrative of being the explanation for what happened, which is blaming the driver for drinking and blaming the paparazzi anyway. So it doesn't fit the official explanation. It doesn't fit the narrative, and there are far more efficient ways of doing it. If you're subscribing to the level of involvement that most people do, to consider it conspiratorial that Princess Diana was killed by anybody on behalf of anyone for any reason. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I did like Trevor's point a second ago. They said that if you're going to use a vehicle in Paris and you want it to be unidentifiable sort of thing, use a vehicle that's common, a white Uno. In Britain, I suppose the equivalent would be like a black Ford Focus or something. That every other bloody car on the road is a Ford Focus or a Ford Fiesta. And so you'd use a vehicle like that because how do you then identify it? I mean, it was 4,000 and something vehicles the police mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so something.
So maybe that is an interesting point. Okay, so as I mentioned, she was pregnant and she was engaged. So there's a few little bits on this. Apparently, Princess Diana did tell friends in the weeks before this that there was going to be a big surprise. There was a top policeman, French policeman, who apparently in 2003, and I couldn't get his name, I bet Dave has, that there were documents that they were engaged, and those documents were suppressed, and that was in major newspapers, but it doesn't name him. There's letters, there's things about previous relationship, but this is a big subject, so we'll throw it out and we'll start talking about it. And then there's the Paul Burrell letter as well, which we need to discuss. But there was a ring, and that is, we know that there was a ring bought the day before the accident. It was prescribed. It was inscribed with "Tell me yes," was inscribed on the inside in his language, in Egyptian. And there was a receipt, and that ring was at his flat. So it would suggest to me that they weren't engaged, but Dodie was planning to. What do you think?
Well, I think you're only engaged if the other person says yes. Until that, you're just the holder of a very expensive ring that doesn't fit you. That's all you are, aren't you? You know, him having the ring and him saying, you know, especially with the inscription. I mean, I could read into it quite easily that him having the ring and him hoping that she's going to say yes, mixed with her saying there's going to be a massive surprise. That massive surprise could have been her dumping Dodie Al-Fayed, for all we know. You know, I mean, events didn't transpire to prove that point. Just like events didn't transpire to prove that they were ever going to be successfully engaged or even get married. So it depends on which way you want it to suit your narrative. That I mean, the ring is an absolute, as you said, Jay. You know, we know that the ring was bought.
It existed.
Yeah, that is an absolute. We know that his intentions were to get married. But I have got the name of the woman who Princess Diana made the comment to. And this is just a week, because it's saying that a lot of people that Diana spoke to made statements about it, because I think, which suggests to me that she knew Dodie Al-Fayed was likely to ask her to get married. Because in the weeks leading up to it, Diana would talk to her friends, and all her friends were saying, this is after the event, that they were all unanimous in this, actually. He's saying that she was not planning a second wedding with anybody. She didn't intend getting married, I beg your pardon. And a week before she died, Diana told Lady Annabel Goldsmith, which is the "I need marriage like a rash on my face" statement. So,
which is brilliant, isn't it? I just love that saying. There's the Darling Dodie letters, which have been used as suggested that there's evidence that she was deeply in love with Dodie. But I mean, I've got to get this name. Rosa Mankton, Mankton, posh person name. She said, they don't really mean anything. She called everybody that. She just used very friendly language like that, and that's how she wrote. So it's really not a great deal to look into that. Do you think that the royal family would have been? I mean, because this is used as the excuse why she was killed, why she had to be suicided, because she was about to marry a Muslim and she was potentially going to have a child. And we'll talk about the baby a bit more in a sec. Do you think that is a good enough reason that the royal family would potentially take this action or order this action? Or I actually think, I know I'll talk about that in a second, but go on. What do you think about that?
Are you going to go, or are you just going to grin at me?
You go, Dave.
Okay, thank you, sir. Me, no, absolutely. It is not out of the realms of possibility that would be the case. If they thought, for one, you've just got to look at the institutionalized class system in a way that we have in UK and in Europe. You know, you've just got to look at the way that those people are held by people who support them, and also the way that they think they are viewed by the rest of the world. They are a commodity for tourism. They really are. I have no issue with the royal family. I'm hardly a royalist. I consider myself to be patriotic in a certain way, but not enough to be blinded to think that it isn't possible that they would be absolutely appalled at the thought that it could possibly happen, and that there might be a mixed race child that was a half brother of the future King of England. It's not difficult to imagine why they might. I mean, we haven't touched upon the fact that she wasn't, and several doctors who've done this, that, and the other, which I'll go into later if we need to. But do I think it's possible? That's absolutely possible. Do I think it's likely? Yes. Out of a lot of the conspiracy theories, this one, I do.
Very much so.
What do you think, Steve? Because I don't think it was the royal. I don't think it would have come from the royal family. I don't think for a second the Queen went, "Kill the bitch." I don't think that happened.
No.
I know that she was doing quite a lot of work with the landmine thing, wasn't she? And she was trying to get all the different nations to not use landmines and to stop storing them and things like that. And I know a lot of different companies, including the UK, were trying to stop her from doing that as well. So you've got that sort of side of it. Plus, I think at the time it was Tony Blair, Prime Minister. Was it Blair?
Oh God, 97.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. New Labour, new danger.
Yeah, yeah. And he was about to give her a bit of a sort of position within the British government to be able to for her to be able to do what she needed to do with the work that she was doing for the landmines and helping children and the Red Cross and stuff like that. But obviously it never sort of went to pass.
Acting as a figurehead, she can't just be given a position. She still needs to be an elected member of Parliament.
That's true. Yeah.
She can be given like an ambassador role.
Yeah.
Like that.
Like I say, he's given a figurehead role.
Yeah. But yeah, in the British royal family, 100%. I believe that they could do something like that.
Now,
exactly like what Dave says. Yeah,
I believe they could do it if they wanted to. I'm not saying they did, though. That's the point I was trying to make.
Totally.
I have to say this. I believe that any governmental body is capable of anything. I believe any ruling class is capable of anything. I didn't say that they were responsible for doing it. They are two very different things. Are they capable of doing it? Yes. Do I think they've done it? No, I'm not necessarily saying they do, but I do want to say this, actually, because I made a note of this. She has had another Arabic lover, Princess Diana, beforehand.
Khan.
Was correct, yeah. Hasnat Khan, it was a Pakistan. Sorry, no, beg your pardon. Yes, Hasnat Khan, he was a Pakistani Muslim heart surgeon. He'd been in a relationship with Diana for 2 years and was said to be, at the time, the love of her life. And he had looked into the possibility of getting married, or she had looked into the possibility of getting married, and that their union had met with absolutely no opposition from the royal family, and that Prince Charles had apparently actually given his blessing because he just wanted to move on from it, because he had already, his eyes were firmly concentrated, well, we know, on Camilla. We know the story regarding Camilla. So the sooner Diana's out of the picture, at whatever level, she's moved on, she's happy, she can remain to be the people's princess. He can do what he needs to with Camilla and move on with his life with the woman who he truly loves as well. So it wasn't a new thing of the possibility of there being an interracial marriage concerning the mother of the future King of England. So
there was also I can't remember his name, but another person that Diana had a relationship with, and that was I think it was a Rex bodyguard or chauffeur, or not chauffeur, like butler or something, and she's on video saying that they were like best friends, and they were even thinking about sort of running away together and getting married and setting up a life and stuff like that. And Diana says on video that he was riding passenger on the back of a motorbike and had an accident and died, and she believed her exact words were, "I believe that he was bumped off by MI5 or MI6."
So my opinion on this one is simply that I don't think anybody in the royal family would have given a crap. I think they were more than happy to sort of move away
Yeah.
and, and get as far away from it as possible.
Just let her get on.
There are people within the British government, though, that still think we are an empire, and that they think in that empirical way, and that anything that sort of harms the crown is a problem that needs to be resolved. I'm absolutely certain in history there's been assassinations to protect the crown.
Yeah.
I wonder whether this might have been that like I say, I don't think the Queen would have anything to do with it, but it would have been somebody high up, an old bloody civil servant somewhere, or somebody within the secret services, intelligence services, that would have thought this was the right thing to do because it's what's right to protect the country. And that's what worries me, because these people, they don't think normally. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're the good guys. And it's those people that in my experience, are the most dangerous. The ones that actually believe what they're doing is just. But anyway, moving on to the Paul Burrell letter, because it is related to this. Oh no, just one thing on that. Stuart Benson was Fayyad's legal advisor. He phoned Dodi phoned him on the day of the event, told him that he had really exciting news and that he had to discuss the legal ramifications of that news, but he didn't actually tell him what it was. But he says he's a firm believer that they were about to get engaged. I think that I think it's definitely the idea that Dodi was going to ask. I don't think, like Dave said earlier, that means they were actually engaged or were ever going to get engaged, because, like I said, there's some evidence to suggest Diana maybe wasn't as keen as he was, and they hadn't actually been going out that long. It was a month.
Yeah,
something like that.
About a month, 6 weeks or something.
It wasn't very long. But Paul Burrell, Gordo, Jesus.
Could we just like it quickly address the pregnancy thing?
Yes, go on. I was going to come back to it. Yeah, go on. Just do it.
I'm not sure where you was thinking of going, whether you'd finish with that. But if you are, then we'll just...
No, it's fine. No, I was going to come back to it, but yeah, no, good to go on.
Okay, well...
You're going to talk about the blood samples?
I don't know, given the response, the way that you said it, perhaps not.
No, it's fine.
But yeah, because a sample of blood were taken from the footwell of the seat where Princess Diana was, as you know, on the night, looking for the pregnancy hormone, and there weren't any traces of it. They say that she wasn't visibly expecting. And the Paget inquiry, the famous Paget inquiry, they tried to find out for years after the crash whether it was possible that Princess Diana might have been pregnant. And Lord Stevens and all his investigators, went into as much detail as they possibly could to try and find out whether any evidence to suggest it, with various forensic teams and things like that. But the team did find traces of a blood that positively identified DNA from the carpet inside the Mercedes, so they know for definite that it was Diana's blood that they were testing. Now, a private forensic company carried out further tests outside of the Paget report, which was supervised by the head of forensic science and drug monitoring at King's College London, according to my notes. And no sign of the pregnancy hormone HCG was ever found. And Lord Stevens said the probability from the blood sample is that she was not pregnant. Probability was that she was not pregnant. The samples were 7 to 8 years old, and it was a long shot, but we had to give it a go. Not conclusive, but on a sliding scale, no, she was not pregnant. And then said, taken together with other eyewitness accounts and her use of contraceptives at the time, contraceptives were found in the blood as well. There is quite a degree of certainty that she wasn't pregnant. So I know that I've got his name down as Robert Winston, who is supposedly a world-renowned fertility expert, assisted the Paget team in saying that. Now, there are people who said that she was actually embalmed.
She was.
Because it was warm and the heat, and to stop the decomposition as much as possible. To all the relevant UK officials came over and all the rest of it. And the embalming process can affect the results of And obviously the embalming process would mean removing the insides and so on, so any fetus could have been disposed of and all the rest of it. But according to the Paget report and Stephen's report and various other officials and world-renowned fertility experts, there was nothing to suggest whatsoever that Princess Diana was pregnant. So we might, nothing to suggest apart from a ring and the fact that he wanted to marry her, that she ever planned on getting married, and nothing at all to suggest that she was pregnant. Really, no empirical evidence behind either of those points.
Yeah. Well,
there was the eyewitness that said, apparently, she said, "I'm 6 weeks pregnant," but that's not confirmed.
Correct. Yeah.
At 6 weeks pregnant, most pregnancy tests looking for the hormone that's pregnancy is only about 70% effective.
Yeah.
The other problem was that she had several transfusions while still in the vehicle.
Yeah.
Which basically would have, it's kind of like watering down the hormone kind of thing. So again, it would make it even more difficult to detect whether she was.
Which is why they tested the blood found in the footwell.
Yeah. But that has been since argued that might have also, because she had actually had transfusions while in the vehicle before she was removed. Even though it is genetically tested and it is identical, it does throw a little bit of doubt on it.
Well, there's other things.
Basically, the blood is going in one end and going out the other, kind of thing.
The validity of those can also be called into question, because there are other first responders that claim that when they arrived on the scene, she had a cut on her thigh and a cut on her shoulder, but apart from that, actually no visible injuries. It's only when they removed her from the wreckage of the car that the blood that they found in the footwell was thought to have come from her thigh, the injury to her thigh. And I've got his name somewhere, but it's deeper in the notes. I'll get it maybe later. That when he was one of the first people there, a fire brigade officer, said that he helped take her out of the car. She was completely awake, totally lucid, speaking, and that, as far as he was concerned, there was no reason why she shouldn't have survived, because she had a cut on her thigh and a little bit of something on her shoulder. Apart from that, that was it. So, the blood transfusion in the car thing can be called into question too.
Yeah, very much so.
But I mean, she went into cardiac arrest immediately as soon as moved from the car. So again, that's just question that. And I mean, and they were doing the open heart. I forget the name of it. Actually, in the ambulance, basically.
Yeah, the cardiac massage. It was actually. So,
and it was, the damage was caused because, again, we'll mention this now, because she wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
Yes.
And neither was Dodie. Neither were the two idiots driving, but they had airbags, and that's what saved the one guy's life who's forgotten everything.
I thought he did wear a seatbelt.
Died. Trevor Rees-Jones,
the bodyguard,
who survived but can't remember anything. Is there any? They're being chased by paparazzi. They're running, and they're driving erratically. A bodyguard whose job is to, and he's a professional bodyguard, is to protect his people. The first thing he doesn't say to them is, "Put your damn seatbelt on." Really? Opinions?
Yeah,
I've seen bollocks on that.
Yeah, that is. You've got one job. People that chose for, or put themselves forward for that kind of level of responsibility. Now, she wasn't just a royal; she was also probably the most popular woman on earth at that time.
Yeah,
she was a celebrity as well, in many ways, because of that. She was an ambassador for peace. So she was also known for being very vehement whenever she got in any vehicle about wearing a seatbelt. Princess Diana.
Exactly.
She would be very, she would vociferously argue the point if people didn't want to wear a seatbelt, and would, be very vocal about the fact that, she'll wear a seatbelt. Yeah. Dodie, I can't answer for. But Trevor Rees-Jones and Henri Paul, it does seem a little bit strange that all of them, every single person, were not wearing a seatbelt. I would posit put forward a supposition that you would like to think that he would be aware at some stage that it might be called upon him to take erratic and certain manoeuvres if he felt like Diana was in danger as the driver of the car. He wasn't just some bloke, you know. That was his job. He would have known advanced driving techniques and things like that to get him out of trouble, get her out of trouble. And like I say, Trevor Rees-Jones, that's his entire job was to look after Princess Diana. That was it.
Yeah, yeah.
So the lack of seatbelts or people not wearing seatbelts, very, very questionable.
Yeah, because she was quite worried about the fact of getting into transport and things like that something might happen. So yeah. Big one.
The point was just made about special seatbelts that are used in a lot of security vehicles. They basically got a small explosive, or they shear. The idea being that they can be removed quickly. Those do exist, but this wasn't owned by Princess Diana. It wasn't owned by Dodi. It was actually a vehicle owned by the hotel, I think. But the point being, it wasn't actually a special security vehicle. It wasn't armored. It didn't have bulletproof glass. None of these sorts of things that a security vehicle would have. And nowadays, Princess Diana would never be not in a vehicle like that if she was alive today. I can understand potentially Trevor Rees-Jones and not wearing a seatbelt up until they started driving erratically and they started to speed, because he would be in a position that he'd want to get out of the vehicle quickly if he needed to. And there are security people that don't wear seatbelts for that reason, but not when you start in basically trying to evade paparazzi, because you can't protect anyone if you're dead. It's just as simple as that. But there is a point about that. But there is no way on earth he would allow the people he's there to protect to not wear a seatbelt. It would be his job to refuse to allow that vehicle to move until the people he was protecting was safe, and that would be his primary role. And he would have that authority as a security guard, as if he was a professional. Anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mentioned Paul Burrell. Don't throw up again, Gordo. You're all right, mate. We're only going to mention him briefly. The royal duty letter. Princess Diana apparently wrote a letter, basically saying that she was fearful for her death, that she thought Prince Charles was planning it, that he was going to affect her brakes on the vehicle or cause some sort of traffic crash, and that this was all a massive decoy because Charles actually wanted to marry Tickle-Leg Burke, or Burke. Burke makes more sense. I think I'll just put a little wiggle on the end of the E there. Tickle-Leg Burke. Just love that. He was William Harry's nanny. Have you guys read the letter at least, where she talks about
bits of it?
Yeah. Obviously, other people have said that this was just a stupid forgery and that she was not afraid for her life. And another great name, Lucia Fletcher. Fletcher. She said it was forged, and it didn't. It wasn't thing, and he just did it basically to sell books. Any opinion on that? Because I think this guy's just a prat.
So go, Steve.
Oh, cheers, buddy. Well, as far as I know, my notes that she wrote 2 letters, one to Paul Burrows and then one to her solicitor lawyer type person, who both obviously kept him, safe and stuff like that. And also, if you watch some of the footage with her chatting, she is, I wouldn't say paranoid, but just worried about getting into cars and things like that, and obviously saying that if I end up being dead in a car accident or car crash, it's a royal family or MI5. Yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? Tricky.
So the prediction of a death. Again, I always reporting. There's a sort of like pecking order. I mean, we're all we're all contemporaries up here on the panel, everybody. But there is a pecking order, so we'll just clear this because I am known for ranting. are going off on one because of all the. I don't get as busy as these two guys. So in between streams, I'm there doing stuff and typing away loads and loads of notes. So I'll just clear it. But the prediction thing, are we okay to harp on about that for a second, Jay?
Go for it.
Okie dokie. Well, because I do think it's a good time as ever to go into it. These two are strapping themselves in for this one. But yeah, you know what it's like. But apparently, 7 weeks before her death, she reportedly expressed concerns she will be killed in an established conspiracy, is what got wrote down it. Okay, so I'll go into a little bits about that. Because it was actually she was good friends with Gianni Versace, and he was shot dead by a guy called Andrew Cunanan, again pronunciation, outside his Miami mansion in 1997. And on the morning after his murder, Dodi's bodyguard, a guy called Lee Sansom, found Diana on the deck of a yacht, gazing out to the sea, and apparently she turned around to him and said, "Do you think they'll do that to me?" So this guy, this bodyguard, this Lee Sansom, said that she was obviously looking out over the sea because she was upset by Versace's death, and made the comment, "Do you think they'll do that to me? Do you think they'll do that to me?" Okay. Now another bodyguard, she was a guy called Ken Wharf. Now he said in 2017, which is one of Diana's royal bodyguard, Ken Wharf, that the princess would often talk about dying in a car crash. And he stated, "When we used to travel down to Highgrove most Fridays on a motorway, she would drive sometimes, and there wasn't a weekend that went by that we didn't see an accident, and she would say to him, 'Oh God, one of these days that's going to happen to me.' It's quite spooky that she said that." Now, he even told one of the investigations conducted during the Paget report, that is, because it finished in 2008, I believe, anyway, but in 2008, that he gave evidence at the High Court during the inquiry into the accident led by Lord Justice Baker. And he told the court that she would frequently talk about dying in a car crash. And when she raised the subject, they set up for a weekend away. She would begin the conversation by saying, "Here we go again. I suppose we could be killed in a car accident." Now, he said that those kind of thoughts and comments were sort of like prompted by her visits to crystal ball readers and tarot card readers, because she was big into that side of it, apparently. But some people wonder whether she was actually into that, or whether it was just a paranoia surrounding that, or whether it was the fact that a car was tampered with. Yeah. But this Ken Wharf chalked it up to her sense of humour. And the last sort of thing that he did say, which about this so-called prediction thing, is that he said that the princess never seemed serious when she spoke of possibly being in a car crash, but joked about it. And he told the court, "I thought it was very, very much a throwaway line of Diana's. And in all my years of working with Diana, she never, even once, said to me that she thought someone was out to harm her." So read into that what you will.
There is also the point that apparently the seatbelt, Diana's seatbelt, was damaged.
Yes.
That has always been put down to damage caused after the accident.
Yeah.
But it could also be damage to make sure she couldn't use it, potentially, or if it did work, she did use it, it didn't work. So that's also
that wasn't even the car that they was using all day either, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was a different vehicle.
Yeah.
It's just another coincidence that was the case. So we'll get into the meat of it now.
Correlation isn't always causation, though, is it?
No, not at all. But when we consider coincidence upon coincidence, then you have to start.
Can I just mention,
there's a line?
Can I just mention something about the Mercedes as well? If that's all right. So the Mercedes that was owned by the Ritz, it was previously it was a stolen vehicle.
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know. I didn't.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it had been stolen. Yeah.
Yeah, and it had a chip missing, which was a chip to something
the engine management unit, weren't it?
Yeah. So again, that could be another factor.
Might have added to the accident.
Yeah.
ABS not worked effectively, or something like that, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Right. CIA, MI5, MI6. They were all watching. Now, the strobe light thing has been mentioned a few times. This is where we're going to get into it.
We need a strobe light for Dave. He's probably.
I
got
love
one
it. I love
somewhere.
it when he does this. This is why I like it when Jay says these are the points that we're going to cover. It enables me to go into geek mode. So.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So before we get into the accusation and the Richard Tomlinson accusations and things, MI6, MI5, CIA were watching Princess Diana. We know that. It's been confirmed several times by different sources. The CIA say they weren't really interested in Princess Diana, but they were interested in a few of her friends because she had royal family connection to a few other governments that weren't as nice as ours. The Lord Stephen said that MI5 had bugged her, and MI6 had also bugged her phone that day. But he promises that there was nothing sinister about those buggings. But they never, to the judicial inquiry, never actually offered any of the tapes or transcripts of any of the recordings. He just promises honest. I was a scout, so I can do that. Yeah.
Dib, yeah.
Lord J. Apparently that's his name.
Lord Steve, Lord
It's really
Jay.
my name.
Lord J, eh? Lord. There hasn't been a Lord
My future-
Dave. I'm starting to feel left out here. There's discrimination
No.
going
Yeah,
on,
that's
people.
it, yeah.
If anybody deserves a lordship, this fucker. But anyway, UK ambassador to France, he said that MI5 and MI6 agents were at the British embassy that night.
Yeah.
But again, he promises on his heart that they were there. It was completely normal that they were there. They were liaison officers with French intelligence. They were just there doing the job. They were not assassins.
He
He
also
says.
reckoned there was acting as customers inside the restaurant as well.
Yes. Well, I still think that there would have been a security presence around Princess Diana. The British government
still.
would not have
Shadow of a
wanted this
doubt,
woman
of
to be
course.
assassinated.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
100%.
yeah.
Yep.
So I don't even know why this was allowed to happen, really. But there would have been insecurity. I don't know why we've never admitted it.
Does it come as a massive surprise to people that ex-presidents have bodyguards?
No, exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
One of the
even-
most famous
even
women on earth.
ex-first ladies. You know,
Yeah,
Jackie
that's it.
Kennedy did until she married Onassis, and then she was no longer a former first lady. She'd lost that privilege because she remarried. Had she stayed a widow, she would have kept Secret Service agents looking after her. Of course, she was being watched all the time.
She did marry one of the wealthiest men on the planet, though, so I think she probably paid for her own security.
I don't think that was the reason, though. I think there is something in statute regarding that, and that's why she lost her protection.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is, yeah. But I mean, yeah, there would have been a security detail around Princess Diana.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she was too high profile, and her if she'd have been assassinated, that would have been incredibly embarrassing for the government. People would have said, "Why weren't you protecting her?"
You've got to remember that regardless of who she is seeing, she is still the mother of the future King of England.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's it.
David, yes, we have done. Go back through. Oh, which channel did we do the JFK one on?
On mine.
There you go, Dave. Go find it on Dave's. So, the plan. Richard Tomlinson was an ex-spy. He came forward and said that the MI6 had a plan. They were going to kill Slobodan Milosevic. That's a name I can say.
Yes, you've done very well there, yes.
I thought so.
Top point.
The plan was they were basically going to use panic-inducing drugs, which one of our lovely subscribers in the thing mentioned, slipped into the person. You then use strobe lighting effect to enhance that panic state and cause a crash. This initially sounded insane. There were witnesses to say, though, that there were flashing lights. I would argue there was also a load of paparazzi clicking cameras like crazy, but there was flashing lights. There's Frances Levistre was one eyewitness. Then the former head of MI6, whose name I didn't write down because I've done very well this evening, confirmed that this actually was a plan that existed.
Sir Richard Dearlove.
Thank you, Dave. How did I not write that name down? Idiot. But he actually said that this plan did exist, but it was dismissed really early. So it never actually was fleshed out. But Richard Tomlinson points out that this was a very coincidental plan. It's a bit like when we talked about 9/11 or we talked about Operation Northwood and go, oh, that's very similar.
Yeah.
So, right, Steve, we'll go with Steve first because then we have to all sit back and listen to Dave for 10 or 15 minutes. But what do you think about this? I mean, we've mentioned the strobe light and flashing light things already. Was it on the Uno? Was it on a motorbike? What do you think? Is that a possible plan?
Yeah, of course it is.
Gordon.
Yeah, of course it is.
Slobodan Milosevic.
That's exactly what he meant. He did mean Slobodan Milosevic, yeah.
I've written it down. I could spell it, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, possibly. It's I read somewhere that apparently that's sort of common practice for MI5, MI6 to use to put a flash in front of a driver. But there were eyewitnesses that said, I think there was a few eyewitnesses that said that it was a motorbike that did the flash, and that after the car had crashed, that the passenger on the motorbike got off the motorbike, walked up, peered in, and then did like a massive X sign like this, jumped on the back of the bike and shot off.
Yeah.
So, you know, sort of signaling to someone. You don't know, do you? X Factor.
Yeah.
But
X-Force. Yeah. Go.
X-Force. Action Force. But yeah, it's we need that CCTV, don't we? You know.
Not happening.
No, it's not. It's not. Dave.
Possibly one of the distinct reasons why there isn't CCTV.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Very much so.
Dave?
Yeah, okay. Well, just to completely go against the grain, I'm only going to give 5 minutes there on this one. Yeah, Richard Tomlinson, you've covered all that kind of stuff, which is very, very cool, the bright white flash. Now, it's a former MI6 sort of propagated that as well, a former MI6 officer by all accounts. That claimed it was a known security service assassination technique. Couldn't give any examples of when or where it was used, though, interestingly. But let's forget that. Apparently, it was a well-known security service assassination technique using just the right light in just the right place at just the right time, he said, to blind a driver, causing a crash. I said most witnesses that were there are around saying that there were multiple bright flashes going on in the tunnel, and it was all the result of the paparazzi who were giving chase. Now, some people have claimed that Henri Paul, you know, he said like his official job was like actually to be head of the Ritz security. That was his official job. Claimed that he was a double agent for security services, you know, so he's an alcoholic and he's a double agent and all this kind of stuff. You've got to love it. And that he was in the pay of the National Security Service, apparently. Now, the reason for this being, where are we?
But, I think that is true, though, isn't it? Wasn't that proven that he was employed by the French security services? He was paid at least £100,000.
Oh, I think it might be a little bit more than that. Because they say that he had considerable wealth that was held in 15 different bank accounts.
Oh, wow.
The conjecture is that they can't decide, or it can't be decided outside of what you've just said, that whether he was actually in the British, French, or United States bankroll, that all of them might have been given him money. And Mohammed Al-Fayed, obviously, is a grieving father, claims that Henri Paul was working for MI6 and that they set him up. Now, on the 17th of August 2013, the Metropolitan Police announced they were reviewing evidence that a guy called unknown only as Soldier N for November, Soldier N, had boasted that the SAS were behind the death of Princess Diana. And then the parents of Soldier N's wife, who had left Soldier N, a bit convoluted. Had reportedly wrote to the commanding officer of the SAS, claiming that her husband had told her that the unit had arranged Diana's death and that it had been covered up. But there was absolutely no evidence to support that. And apparently the MI5, MI6 completely cooperated with investigators all the way through Operation Paget, all the way through the Baker reports, all the way through it all. And were absolutely open and candid that there were MI6 operators in Paris that night, but none of them could be linked to the crash. But they did admit that there were operatives in Paris because of Princess Diana that night. That's all I'm going to give you.
There you go. All I'd argue is that if you're going to kill somebody like this, you need to make sure it's an accident. It looks like an accident. The only problem with this is you're risking that she'd survive. It's so it's such a dangerous way to do it. And the other thing is if you're going to assassinate anybody high profile, you need to make sure it's simple, and you need to make sure it's definitely going to work. And we talked about that in the JFK assassination. You need to have simplicity, because the more complicated it is, the more things can go wrong. If this was an assassination attempt and they did it this way, there were a lot of witnesses, and it was really complicated, and the chances of you actually killing her are reasonably slim, unless you have already messed around with her seatbelt, which we've already mentioned is a possibility. But he might not have crashed. He might slam the brakes on and nothing happened. He hit a pillar and spun around, and the car was completely smashed. You also have to assume that he would go into it breaking the speed limit. He might not have done. He might have been doing 30 miles an hour like he was supposed to. There's so too many factors that they couldn't control unless the driver was in on it. That's, to me, it doesn't make sense as an assassination attempt.
In cohesion with the fact that, like you say, that parts of the car were supposedly missing, because from what I got, it was like after the event, because it had been stolen a few months earlier, as we said, from a restaurant. It's stolen from outside a restaurant, this Mercedes, and it was found within 2 weeks. With some small but very significant parts missing. Now, and I knew that I had listed them down somewhere. So there's the electronic management system that were found to control the electric windows, the power steering rack, and the anti-lock braking system.
Yeah, a little bit too suspect, isn't it?
That's fairly.
The point I was just going to make was, the light system on its own doesn't make sense.
No.
If you add it to the seatbelt's damaged, the vehicle is damaged, and potentially another vehicle, so you blind the driver and then you give it a nudge. It's still complicated as hell. I'm not sure it's a way I'd do it, but it's suspicious.
There was a system devised for the M48 Patton tank used by the United States military, which had a floodlight as well as an infrared light. Sometimes they would use a parabolic mirror above the actual main armament, used it in Korea and also in Vietnam, to try to deflect other shots from oncoming enemy tanks and artillery fire, with directing sunlight and also burst flashes from large halogen lamps to blind and confuse the enemy. Numerous amounts of these M48 tanks got taken out because it didn't work.
Massively overly complicated and didn't work.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
All right, so we'll break it down into the final things, and Dave will tell all the bits and bobs he's written down that he hasn't already told us about.
Starting to get to know me only too well, you brother.
Murder or tragic accident. All right.
Oh,
so
can I
bits and bobs? I'll go
just
on,
really
Dave.
quickly? I watched or read somewhere again that that another reason why she could have been bumped off as well is because she found out that the royal family was into human trafficking as well. So I just thought I'd put that out there. So his face.
And she's a lizard. So the Queen's into human trafficking because she's a reptilian and she doesn't respect human life.
Where's Andrew now?
And her eyes go. They don't. So anyway, I've been in the same room as the Queen. She was all right. Anyway,
My mum's done work for her. We got letters off the Queen. Not the Queen, Princess Margaret or something anyway. But anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, save the children.
I know somebody got pissed up at Princess Margaret.
No way.
She was a lady when she was younger. She liked to drink. But anyway.
Fantastic.
Moving on. So, murder or tragic accident. The few bits I've sort of focusing on. The Uno was never traced. I find that difficult. No CCTV. I find that difficult.
Mm.
The seatbelts, them not wearing seatbelts, and then that Diana's was damaged. I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
And the engagement. I don't necessarily believe she was pregnant, but I do think there are people within the government that wouldn't have liked what Princess Diana was up to, and the potentially a engagement, not necessarily to Dodi, but Mohammed Al Fayed, who's basically got a big gob, I don't think would have been popular within parts of the UK government. So those are my areas that I think I stumble on a little bit with this, that I think, could she have been murdered? Yeah. I think she could have been. Was she? Probably not, because I don't really believe this is how you would do it. But I think she would. There's lots of other ways she'd kill somebody without doing it this publicly and this high risk. But is it possible? Oh God, yeah. That's where I sit on it, really. How about you guys, to sort of wrap it up? What are the areas that you sort of do struggle with?
The white Uno, for me, because it as we sort of said before, unless you sort of knew what you was doing driving, you're not. It's not the best ideal choice of vehicle to take out a massive Mercedes, is it? So I do think that it was most probably a planned hit of some sort, but Uno got in a way, and it all sort of went a bit pear-shaped. That's what I'm sort of thinking. But again, there's lots of sort of discrepancies in the whole story, the whole sort of thing leading up to it. So yeah.
There's lots of things that aren't right, but I mean, if you look at any story hard enough, you'll find stuff that seems wrong, that seems odd.
Yeah, that's very true.
You could look at my day to day, and you'd say there's coincidences there. I mean, that green light when I was late for work, that was coincidental. I hit 3 green lights and no reds. Conspiracy, or
superstitious.
Just,
Yeah,
look hard enough
it.
at anything, you'll find something. But go on, Dave.
Are there any bits I struggle with? No, not really. I mean, I can sort of see both sides for all of it. That's just me, you know. I have it's sort of like a damning summing up of people are conspiracy theorists. There's been studies done on the psychology of conspiracy theorists, but I'll save that till last. But there is. So I don't really struggle with any of the points, in so much as what you got to bear in mind is when these came about, because up until Dodi Al Fayed, people taking it for what it was. That was it. There is always the tinder. There is always the small snowball that starts off.
Yeah.
The rumor mill, the wheels start turning, and I can see why it can be considered a conspiracy. I can see why it could be considered to be murder. I can also massively see why it was just a tragic accident. And many times, you know, when it's somebody who people love and have feelings for, or they will try to reason it the best way that they possibly can. I don't really think it was one of the best murders ever committed. Not that any are good, obviously, that goes without saying. But, you know, as you said, Jay, I mean, I think you and Steve pretty much nailed it, really. It was there's better ways of doing it, isn't there? If you want to murder somebody, there are better ways of doing it. But there are some other fun facts about some of the conspiracies. If you'll indulge me, I understand if you don't want to, because
shut up, Dave.
yeah, I honestly don't blame you. I'm going to be honest.
No, go for it.
Is arms dealers. Yes, you heard right. Arms dealers. Now, these are people who sell limbs. No, they're not. I'm only joking. Dodi and Diana were not the targets of the royal family at all, but actually the target of Arabic arms dealers. This came out in 2006 by some particular individual who whatever. And which totally contradicts all the other theories that come out. It doesn't weaken the belief that this is a possible thing, that arms dealers wanted rid of her, because she was massively proactive in disarmament as well as the mind thing, and the obviously the MI5 thing now regarding Henri Paul. Okay, now this is in so much as that his blood was replaced by somebody else's. So Henri Paul's blood was replaced by somebody else's to hide the fact that he was an agent. If he was an agent, he's dead. So it doesn't matter. But and Operation Paget performed DNA tests on all the evidence that was left over, which proved that it was his blood, and this is the blood that the French authorities had originally tested as well. But apparently, this report does contain a little bit of a wild sort of like card. Was that apparently he was a low-level informant for the French Secret Services, as you've said. We know that he was involved in the Secret Service part. But not only that, that he'd received multiple large deposits, like I said earlier, into his banking accounts for a year and a half before the crash, which was totally inconsistent with his salary. And all his bank account, it amounted to something like nearly $300,000 or 300,000, whatever the French were using at the time, which is onions, I suppose, or I don't know. And the source of his money or the source of his wealth could never be identified. You could never find out how he had so much money and where it came from.
Yeah, his parents said that he made a lot of tips.
Believe that. But there was no evidence of Henri Paul that was contacted by any of his so-called Secret Service handlers on the night. But another thing that we didn't mention as well, by the way, is that he wasn't even supposed to be working that night.
Exactly. Yeah,
he wasn't
supposed to be working that night.
Yeah, he went back home.
It was Diana and Dodi that changed their plans, which unexpectedly meant he had to go to work.
Yeah.
So that's like saying he because he wasn't supposed to be working, he couldn't have known that he was supposed to be part of a plan or part of a scheme to kill the couple in the first place. But there you go, I suppose.
Unless it was a crime of opportunity.
Can I just quickly make a couple of points? Not BMW. Mercedes also contacted the French police and said that they would look at the car and check the car over to see if anything was missing or anything was sort of placed upon the car. And the French police apparently turned around and said no, that's not possible. And also the tunnel and the crash scene was cleaned down. They used some special white detergent to clean all the tunnel down around the affected area, and was reopened within 24 hours. So that's quite quick, and also getting rid of evidence as well, I would suggest. So
I've seen crashes on the M6. They don't open it bloody thing that quickly.
No.
But yeah. Hey, except I said I don't think it was a hit, but I do think there would have been people within the British government that were okay with it.
Oh yeah.
And sad as it seems, they were, they didn't mind that this was slightly embarrassing, and actually in the long run, the royal family will only benefit from it, because William will be the most popular king. Charles can't be king, but William will be a very popular king one day, and partly because of his mom.
Yeah. Do you think that obviously with Harry sort of leaving the royal family, do you think obviously it has a big part to play with what happened to his mum and stuff like that, but do you think that they know truly what happened?
I very much
Like-
doubt it, because
like
would
truly.
you honestly tell a child that you've murdered their mom?
But I mean, do you think they've done the research themselves? I mean, it's.
I think
don't
they're
know.
very insulated right myself, but I don't think Harry is Prince Charles's son.
I
No,
would
I don't.
I
I
would
don't.
say watch
Yeah.
the interview he done
Yeah.
with Oprah Winfrey,
Yeah.
because he says now, I don't know if this is actually word for word, but it's very close or along these lines. I'll give you two sentences, or maybe one, whatever, but it don't matter. They killed my mother, and they're not going to stop until she's dead, and points to Meghan Markle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
They killed my mother, and they are not going to stop until she is dead. Now, this was when they were talking about the royal family. They weren't talking about the paparazzi. When they were talking, the paparazzi weren't involved in it. Being a socialite wasn't involved in it. I mean, you've got to admit, they are probably the biggest socialites on the face of the planet right now.
yeah.
Let's have it right.
Big
But that is the
podcasters.
comment that he made. Needs to be bore in mind. I'm just putting it out there. They killed my mother, and they're not going to stop until she's dead, and pointing to his wife. So
Yeah. And that's a term that Diana used herself as well, wasn't it? Quite a lot of times. They, as in.
And we've got to say that there are elements within our government, deep state, whatever you want to call them, that don't that they worry about these sorts of things. They how the government looks is more important than people's lives sometimes, and a scandal is worth killing to prevent. I mean, we can go deep into conspiracy theories about secret organisations within our government and all these sorts of things. But even if we just base on complete reality, there are people that think protecting the crown is everything.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing in the world. And I tell you, I've met some of them. They're insane. They genuinely think their loyalty to the crown supersedes everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to say, would parts of our British government do this? Yeah. If they thought it protected the crown, they would do it.
Yeah, of course they would.
They wouldn't do it
I
this way.
have to agree with that. Yeah.
They're insane. But and they were worse 50 years ago, and they were worse 100 years before that. Back when we actually had an empire, they were even worse. That way, they used to say it was for God. They did it, not just for the crown, but for God. But,
That's sort of Trevor Owen's comment there is sort of saying what Dave was saying earlier, wasn't it? That the crown is a brand. Excuse me, like, tourism. You know, for
Absolutely, the revenue that it
UK.
brings into the UK.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely certain that elements of the British government do see it like that, and I think the Parliament they just see dollar signs. I think that there's a more sinister part of the British government that actually still believes the crown is the head of state and is completely loyal to the Queen, and don't see it as a brand. They see it as our royal family sort of thing, the state, head of state sort of thing.
It's 400 years, since the English Civil War, there has always been that divide. There is. It still exists.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a royalist. I quite like the royal family. I never want us to lose the royal family, but
I think as a it's a part of our national identity, isn't it?
It is.
It just is. It really is.
Yeah, I think every household has a cup and saucer with Diana and Prince Charles on, don't they?
No, I don't. But I have got the Queen's face all over the place in my wallet, and on all the letters that come through my door.
I think to drag us back to the point in what we're dealing with is there's four main questions, isn't there? Really, that surround this. There are four main questions that surround this, in my opinion, and I admit that it's just my opinion. And then I'm going to go on a brief rant about conspiracy theories, just to play devil's advocate and just to make it balanced. But I did write these four things down. And four big questions are: why Diana and her boyfriend Dodi Fayed didn't stay in the suite at the Ritz Hotel that night. Secondly, why Dodi and Trevor East Jones let her in the car if chauffeur Henri Paul was drunk and they knew he was drunk, why did they even let her get in the car in the first place? Number 3, why a usually safety conscious Princess Diana didn't wear a seatbelt? We sort of cover that before, but she was big into that safety, all of it. It was an integral part of her personality. That. And of course, we didn't really go into this one, but there's plenty of information about it and plenty of fors and against. Will be how it took 1 hour and 46 minutes from the crash to get Diana to the hospital. Nearly 2 hours to get to the hospital, bypassing hospitals that were closer to the crash site.
Indeed.
And some of them, because they didn't have the specialist equipment, so on and so forth, and that the ambulance that picked her up had specialised equipment, which meant they could only go at a certain speed, so on and so forth. But that still raises more questions than it answers. So you are left with all these conspiracy theories. Now, in conclusion, you see, I would say that the main reason that some people believe the conspiracies about her death is that they've got an explanation for something that they're having a difficult time to make sense of, because she was loved, she was respected, as I said before, and by being able to provide a sort of reason behind a death which was tragic and unexpected, as we all know. And everyone will be able to relate to this in the side chat, and you guys will on the panel there. Conspiracy theories mean that people are able to sort of fulfill the sort of need of having control over the unknown. Conspiracy theories enable people to have control over the unknown. There's high levels of suspicion and mistrust of the government. And it's important in the creation of these beliefs to have this mistrust and bias towards thinking that way, because the people who do come up with these reasons as to why the authorities and stuff shouldn't be trusted, and the reasons as to why the royal family shouldn't be trusted, and that they would do something like this in the first place, it's they need that grounding. And I suppose really with the help of what you call confirmation bias, it enables people to evaluate certain aspects and certain parts of information and they can ignore other bits of information in such a way that it serves to fulfill a pre-existing idea about what really happened to Diana, or for that matter, of any other conspiracy. And that's the issue with conspiracy theories. Does it point to collusion by the British government and anybody else being implicit in her death? We're always going to be asking that question, aren't we?
Yeah, very much so.
No, that's true for most conspiracy theories, to be honest. And debunkers, vice versa.
Almost.
That they have the same sort of thing, is that they just ignore evidence that
almost like a
doesn't-
belief
they're
system,
biased.
isn't it? If that makes sense.
Yeah, most definitely. I'll just answer this question quickly because Em asked it. Which part of the government am I referring to? There's normally the ones I've met were civil servants within the MOD that very clearly made it clear that they had an attitude that was patriotic in a different way that's normal to normal. But normally these are civil servants that have worked within the British government their entire careers. They normally have very unusual or vague titles, and they'd be within virtually every element of the different departments towards the top, particularly in the intelligence services. So that's a simple question. No, it's just quite a vague answer, but unfortunately they're a vague group of people. So, and that's the way they like it, I think.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I think we've answered the question, really. None of us really believe Princess Diana was murdered. Is that fair to say? We all kind of agree that they would, but maybe not like this. Is that fair?
Steve?
I still believe. I believe she was bumped off. I do. That's always been my sort of thoughts on it. I can remember waking up in the morning and my parents especially my mum being absolutely not hysterical, but so upset and Princess Diana's died, and I was like, okay, and went back to sleep. But yeah, no, I mean for what she was all about, she had her feet in sort of, or fingers virtually in a lot of things going on, and a lot of controversial things as well. So yeah, I reckon I don't think it was an accident. I think if anything, it was possibly a hit that had gone a bit pear-shaped, to be honest. I mean, you know, they were supposed to stay in the Ritz to have dinner and stuff like that, and then they changed their mind because they thought that paparazzi had got in and were pretending to be customers and things like that. So they went up to the apartment, which is where they were supposed to stay, as Dave says, and then changed their mind and decided to go back to like Dodia's apartment further downtown, and then changing car. It just yeah.
So it was an operation that was started, was probably supposed to be done a cleaner way, but because they got the ball rolling, they just went with it, and it got messy. That's your basically your theory.
Yeah,
okay.
And also the damage to the car as well. The car was absolutely wrecked, and I know 60 odd miles an hour is quite fast, but for a big car like that, it's 60 miles an hour. It's
hitting
not
a concrete slab, though. I mean, I think the damage is pretty consistent. I would expect to see that sort of damage.
Yeah,
hitting a concrete wall at 65 miles an hour.
Yeah,
I think so. That's just my personal. I'm not a crash test dummy. I don't know for certain, but I didn't see any. I've seen crashes on on the motorway and stuff with cars doing that sort of speed, and they're absolutely wrecked. They're destroyed.
True. And it is a 90s vehicle as well, isn't it? So it's not going to be as
heavy. Yeah, heavy vehicle.
Yeah.
How about you then, Dave? Was that a fair assessment for you? Because I've got Steve's completely wrong. So
yes, it is a fair assessment for me, Jay. I don't believe she was murdered. I don't. And I'll try. Well, not that I need to validate it, but I will. If you are anti-establishment, or if you were trying to protect an establishment, depending upon which side of the conspiracy theory you want to go, the last thing you need is a martyr. Okay. Now, one of the biggest events in history, which we covered only the other week, the attack on the World Trade Center. Again, conspiracy theories aside, the ability to think laterally as opposed to, unilaterally, is that Osama bin Laden was responsible, yada yada. However, they did kill him. He was killed. He was buried at sea, so he couldn't. There was no martyrdom. Is one theory. The other theories about the Muslim practices, so on and so forth. Now think of it like this, yeah. Regardless of which, she was still the people's princess. They still loved her. The royal family really have gained nothing whatsoever by her death, at all.
No.
Nothing at all. Nothing. It hasn't helped their figures. I would also posit the argument that Prince William would be just as popular, the most popular royal anyway, just because of his mother, even if his mother hadn't been killed, because of his mother being so popular. So I would say he'd be just as popular. He would be the people's king. I also think they were condemned for their response when she died. The Queen was condemned for not making a statement for 5 days until she made a public statement. She had grandchildren to look after. She was the head of the household. She was the head of the royal family. They were in Scotland at the time. She was dealing with Prince William and Prince Harry. They have said this. You've got to bear in mind that how many stones would you guys leave unturned if you thought your mother were murdered?
So if you have the resources.
and they're going to have access to the resources. I think it was a tragic. I think it was a tragic accident. I think the damage to the car is congruent with what would happen in a tunnel. I think the missing CCTV footage is down to the fact that it was just shoddy. It was like, yeah, well, you don't really need to see it because we haven't got any. It doesn't show anything. It's of no help whatsoever. We're absolutely crap at our job. It was filming just the front of the stores. It was filming just the front of the shops. There's a need to understand something that is unknown, strange, alien, or upsetting. It's part of the human condition to want to do that. But I certainly don't think that anybody has gained anything by the death of Princess Diana. And as I've said before, they were talking about this in the Roman era, would be cui bono, which is who benefits. Yeah, you just look through history; it's replete, it's resplendent with actions that can be attributed to gain, whether it's financially, whether it's whether it's governmentally, politically. But in this instance, nothing seems to have been gained whatsoever. The only sort of like little argument you can really go for is, well, she's pregnant. She's pregnant. Why kill her? Why not have a miscarriage? Why not? There's lots of ways we could have dealt with
this. Very true. Yeah.
So for me, no, it's just a conspiracy theorist dream that somebody was so revered around the world met a tragic end, but so did other people. 3 people died that night.
Yeah.
And
I don't
the fourth guy is
I don't think she was
disabled for
murdered.
his whole life.
I don't think she was murdered. I think it was an accident. This time it was an accident, people, and that's what I think.
I'm open to the possibility that it was more. I'm going to sit between the two of you. I wish we'd have to go 3. I'm open to the possibility, and I'm absolutely certain there are people that would. I just don't think they'd do it this way.
Yeah.
I do think that people
me.
did have stuff to gain from Princess Diana's death because she was becoming an embarrassment to certain people within the government. And I think if she had been pregnant, or if they even thought she might have another child, that would be enough that they would be concerned. But did they? I don't think so. If I'm honest, but only mainly because of the way it happened. There's too many uncontrollable variables, and I said this far too much in the JFK video that we did. It makes me sound like a horrific murderer, but if I was going to kill this person, it's not how I would do it.
Yeah,
and if I kill somebody, it would look like an accident, and it would be simple as hell, and it wouldn't go wrong. And professionals know how to do these things without things going wrong.
In circumstances at a very base level, and for common people, I don't believe in the class structure before anybody passes comment, but we are talking about royals here. Let's talk about your everyday person then. I'll use the term everyday person. If somebody is murdered, it's not unknown for the first port of call or the first people to be questioned are the family. If it's a woman, the husband will be questioned about it.
90% of marriage deaths, they reckon, is the husband or somebody close family.
You look close, because that could be the cause of what happened, and so on and so forth. And so, it's going to be, isn't it? She's died. Everybody loved her. We all loved her. She was great. But it's the royal family. We better make sure. And you're going to look into that. And of course, we all know with everything that's going on. Let's not mention Prince Andrew. They're not. It's not unknown for them to be beyond reproach, is it?
Yeah.
Allegedly.
That's it.
At the end of the day, though, it's a very simple fact for me that you wouldn't do it in a city centre with loads of variables, with loads of potential witnesses. It would be a helicopter crash. She was always going, skiing, things like this. There are loads of ways she could have had an accident that would have been a lot more effective than the way this happened. Yeah. So,
if
were there plans to murder her? Possibly.
If Bert Jones, who hates everybody and is the biggest fan of David Icke, can't come up with concrete evidence that there was any collusion for her to be killed in any way, shape, or form, then the father of one of the victims of the crash, a multi-millionaire who has got more money and resources to do this or to chase it up, He's tried every possible avenue of conspiratorial thinking that he possibly can to try and get something sorted out, and eventually gave up himself after 10 years. Then, you know, you've also got to you look at the facts. Don't sway away from the facts because it doesn't make you happy. You can't do that. That's not.
No, that's not how we roll on the Mystery Machine.
Afraid not. No.
Even though we do piss people off quite
Yes.
But I don't mind. You should see some of my comments. You wouldn't believe it.
Oh, actually, I've had a lot more hate mail since becoming part of the Mystery Machine.
Good.
No way.
I'm happy about that. Mate, if we're doing something right, if we're pissing somebody off, we're doing something right. It's because we're actually not pandering to people's opinions. We're telling you only what we think. But please try to remember that sometimes this is opinion. We will offer you facts, but then it is a bit of opinion as well. And if you have a different opinion to us, well, I know our lovely subscribers are watching now. They have the same opinion as us because you believe what we tell you. Wait for comments. Fuck off. But you know what I mean. It's like, oh god, some of the comments.
Yeah.
But my other channel that I now do, Sidetrack, which is I just talk about geeky stuff. Those people are even more insane. So there you go. I mean, sci-fi nutters, they can be horrible. Really horrible. But anyway, if your opinion is different to theirs. So that is it then. Princess Diana, definitely murdered. I think that was what we agreed, wasn't it? I forget. I stopped listening today for the last 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But what are we doing next week, Dave? Or are you going to keep us in suspense again?
No, I am going to tell you. But I am going to say, no, we didn't agree that she was definitely murdered.
No.
Oh, didn't we? I did stop listening.
No, it was the opposite.
Steve thinks she was definitely murdered.
Yeah, you're in the middle.
You're in the middle, and I think it was a tragic accident. It was exactly that. Accidents can happen. I fell off a bike once. I wasn't pushed. Or maybe I was. Don't know. But next week, we're going to be doing spontaneous human combustion.
Okay.
That's hot, that, isn't it?
Steve, being the smoker in the building, is actually at risk of this. So you better be listening next week, Dave. Steve, all right, mate?
I think everyone's at risk of it, aren't they?
Well, it is spontaneous, so maybe.
Yeah.
But
just that one photo that I remember seeing.
No, don't worry about that, Steve. You know me. Remember the JFK? I'm okay about rolling some gruesome photos.
So if you want some gruesome photos of just a leg and a pile of ash, we're definitely going to have it next week. Cannot wait. So Trevor Owens straight on it. The leg. Show the leg.
Yeah, that's the one, Trevor. Yeah,
we're going to show it. Okay then, guys. So thank you very much again, and everybody in the side chat. You've been brilliant tonight. Some really good views, even though you kept jumping ahead. I kept seeing the light comments, and I'm like, "That's later. Shut up."
They always do that. It's like right to the very end, 2 minutes in. It's like
it's going because they know what they're talking about. This is the thing. They know the subjects. So thank you very much, guys, and we will see you next week. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, all of that. Join Dorias Lives. Don't join Stranger Times. I say it every week. It's nearly 1,000. We don't hit 1,000.
No, join Stranger Times.
No, because it's really funny that he's not hitting 1,000. So don't do it.
It is fairly amusing.
Slap him, not him. Him. Dave's all right. But Jamie, no.
You know I have shared your channel everywhere. You know I have. I want you to hit that 1,000. So
cheers, guys.
Please go and help him. Good night, guys. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.